Welcome to today's Daytime Dialogue. Today I have the great honor and privilege to speak to an old-time Chicagoan who has had the zchut to live in Israel for many years and who has truly impacted American Jewry. I don't think I ever told him the story of a Torah Masorah convention where he once spoke, and he spoke about the state of Israel. And it was on the list of the top 10 things Jewish educators needed to think about. And he said, I'm saying the state of Israel and not Eretz Yisrael. And it made a tremendous impression on me, but so do all of his works. He's a historian, he's a Rav, and he is a Chicagoan at heart, Rabbi Berel Wein. Rabbi Wein, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this today.
My pleasure, Rabbi Matanki, my pleasure.
You know, because you're here and you're part of our history in Chicago, I was hoping we could do a little bit of Chicago history for a minute.
Whatever you want.
Good. I'm behind me is a picture of Congregation KINS, where I
Sephardic Shul.
The Sephardic Shul. I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Shul on the west side?
I spoke in the Sephardic Shul when I was 11 years old on Slichus night, and the chazan was Pinchik. And there were a few thousand people in the shul. The shul was enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And Rabbi Cardone was the Rav, the great Talmud Chacham. And that night, they gave the Associated Talmud Torahs, Rabbi Menachem Sachs, Zechrono Levracha, the right to make an appeal for the Associated Talmud Torahs. And so I was like he wanted to show what they do. So I was like the product, and I spoke for 5 or 7 minutes in front of a few thousand people. And that really gave me confidence that I would be able to be a public speaker.
Wow. And at that time, were you already in the academy, in the yeshiva, or you were still in public?
I was not in the academy yet. I was in the last year of public school. And but I was in the yeshiva in the afternoon and the evening. My Zayda Zechrono Levracha, Rabbi Rubenstein, put me into the yeshiva. So Rabbi Bar and Rabbi Schultz, and Rabbi David Silver were my rabbeim during that period of time until I went into the academy, and then I went into the regular yeshiva program.
See, I had Rabbi Silver when I was in the academy. So he taught.
What a wonderful human being! What a special human being!
An amazing man. But I still remember we learned Chumis Mitlasi with him as a good Litvak.
Yeah. Well, he was a real Litvak. His father was the Balkori of my father's shul in Chicago.
And I remember you telling stories about your father. I knew your father, many of us did, that when he was in yeshiva, that he was Reb Velvel the Chulin. Do I have it right?
Right.
Well,
he was a Talmud of Reb Shimon Shkop,
mm-hmm.
the great Rosh Yeshiva. So in 1920, after the First World War, Reb Shimon reopened his yeshiva in Grodno, which was then Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And the town had been fought over during the First World War, was pretty much destroyed. And the yeshiva did not have a full set of the Babylonian Talmud. I know it's hard to believe today. Every bar mitzvah boy has 2 or 3 sets. But they did not have a full set. And there was only one set in all of Grodno. And it was in the house of a very wealthy man. And he had it under lock and key. He wouldn't lend anything out. I don't blame him. But he gave permission to Reb Shimon that anyone that wanted to come and study in his house, they could. So Reb Shimon chose a number, I think 4 or 5 of his students who had phenomenal memories. My father had a phenomenal memory, even till his last days. And they went and memorized the missing Masechtas. And when Reb Shimon used to say, I have a living Babylonian Talmud. And if you wanted to ask a question on Chulin, and there was no Maseches Chulin in the yeshiva, you came over and asked my father. My father said, "This is what the Gemara said. This is what Rashi said. This is what Taisa said." That was the Lebed Geshas.
What year did your father come over to the United States?
My father came to left Grodno in 1924 and went to Eretz Yisrael. And he was a Talmud by Rav Kook till 1929. In 1929, Rav Shimon Shkop came and taught for 2 years in Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan in New York. And he sent out a letter to all of his students and said, "Come join me in New York. Together we'll build a Mokum Torah in America." So my father left Israel in 29 and he came to America, and he was with Reb Shimon for during the 2 years Reb Shimon was there.
And then he came to Chicago right
Well,
afterward?
then it's even a greater story is that Dr. Rabbi Revel, was a great Moker Rabbonon, and he knew every rabbi in America. He knew them, he knew the families, it was everything. And my father, there was a prize that Israel Rokeach Foods, Rokich.
Yeah.
So Israel Rokeach gave a prize of $500 to the outstanding student in the Beis Medrash in Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan. And my father won the prize. Well, in 1932, $500
was a lot of
was a
money.
year's wages for most Americans. So my father had money, and he still was not married. And Dr. Revel told him, he said, there's a rabbi in Chicago, Rabbi Rubenstein, and he has 3 daughters. He said, go to Chicago. You'll like one of them. And he came to Chicago, and he met my mother, was the middle daughter, and he married her. And then he stayed in Chicago. He got a position with the Odessa Shul. And then he was the Rav in the Beis Medrash Hagadol, the Luknika Shul, for all these years. And then Kesser Ma'ariv. And that's how he came to Chicago.
And when you were growing up on the West Side, you've talked many times about the number of people who would go for tashlich, the tens of thousands of people who go for tashlich. What was the community really like? How many people were Shomer Shabbos? How many of your generation?
What can I say? They weren't observant, but they were Jewish to the core. And they still had Eastern European geschmack to them. Most of them, their children already were gone. And certainly their grandchildren. On our block that I lived, there were about 100 boys. It was on Douglas Boulevard between Christiana and, between Homan and St. Louis, Kimball and St. Louis today. And there must have been 100 boys on that block because they had big apartment buildings, everybody. I was the only Shomer Shabbos kid on the block.
So today, when you come back to Chicago, and you've come back so many times, we thank God have many Shomer Shabbos kids on the block. What was the
difference was the academy, the parochial school, the day schools, that was it. If you went to public school, unless an enormous amount of energy was put into you by your parents and other factors, you stood no chance.
And when you were first going to the yeshiva, to the academy and to the yeshiva was originally in the afternoon until the war, right? It was the Limudei Kodesh was. I remember.
No. Well, I went to the yeshiva. It was after the war already, so it was in the morning. But originally, from 1921 till I would say 1948, The Limudei Kodesh was in the afternoon, and they went to college in the morning or high school in the morning.
And when you went to the academy, was it on Douglas or on Wilcox? It was on.
It began, the first year was on Douglas, then it moved to Wilcox.
Mhm. And who were your teachers in those days?
In the academy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the yeshiva, the great Rav Herzl Kaplan was my Rebbe. Rav Mendel Kaplan was my Rebbe. But in these secular studies, we had Miss Martin and we had Miss Love, and Rabbi Fabian taught science. I mean, I know it sounds strange, but we all took at least 2 years of Latin
In the academy.
in the academy, and Miss Martin taught it, and she also taught English. And Miss Love taught history. And there was no fooling around, you know. I mean, it was the real McCoy. It was an enormously successful Limudei Kodesh and secular studies program. Just enormously. I'm grateful till today for what the Chicago, the yeshiva and the academy gave to me. And then when I graduated the academy, I went to Roosevelt University, and I went at night because I wanted to be in the yeshiva all day. And then when I graduated Roosevelt, I went to DePaul Law School, but I also went at night because I wanted to stay in the yeshiva all day.
And when did you have Rabbi Kreisworth as a Rebbe?
I had Rabbi Kreisworth in 1949, 50, and 51.
I remember Rabbi Lichstein, who just passed away recently, told us the stories of when Rabbi Kreisworth first came to Chicago. He was very dapper in his dress.
Yeah, he came, he had an electric blue suit. He had the loudest ties. He was, he had a little French beard. But he was something. He was fire. He used to sit down in the yeshiva in the Beis Medrash for 6-8 hours consecutively and learn b'kol rum in a loud voice. I mean, he was inspirational to us. And I always felt, I said it to him also many times, that I don't remember his shiurim because they were at a different level than we could absorb. His bikiyus was unbelievable. But he made Talmidim, he made people, and he inspired us to do something for the Jewish people. Out of our class, a tremendous amount of rabbis, mechanchim, Roshei Kollel, Talmidei Chachomim came. And it's because he was the inspiration.
And if
he took me out of being a lawyer. I mean, he really took me out.
Because of him, you ended up in Miami?
Yeah.
Really?
And he had sent Rabbi Rotman, Rabbi Louis Rotman, Zichrono Livrocha, to be the Rav of Miami Beach. Then it was nothing. And Rabbi Rotman had a very small congregation. And I was then a lawyer, and I owned a business. I was a partner in a business. And I remember one day, Erev Thanksgiving, I was sitting in the office of the business getting ready to give out kosher Empire turkeys to the employees, none of whom were Jewish. They all thought the kosher was the best in the world, the tastiest. I didn't explain to them it's because it had salt in it, but that's a different story. But in any event, in comes Rabbi Rotman. I said to him, Louis, what are you doing here? He said, I came to see you. Rabbi Kreisworth sent me. I'm not leaving till I get your commitment. And he says, I'm leaving Miami Beach. I'm going to Long Beach. And Rabbi Kreisworth said, I can't go unless you agree that you're going to come to Miami Beach and be my successor. So I told him, you're crazy. But you can't tell that to Rabbi Rotman, who was more persistent than Rabbi Kreisworth. And eventually I said, okay, I'll be a candidate. I went to Shavuos to try out for the job. I didn't even have a black suit. And the fools elected me. And then my wife said, my wife, who was much more clever than I have ever been, said to me, you'll go, you'll be happy, I'll be happy, the children will be happy, you'll do what you want to do, what you always wanted to do. Because the truth of the matter is that a lawyer sees people at their worst. In all my law career, nobody ever came to me and said, I'd like to do this guy a favor. They come to you, I'd like to get this, and this, and make this contract, break that contract, whatever. I don't have to describe to you. It's an adversarial profession. And it grated on me. It really, I would come home some days and cry. And so she said, try it. So we went, and it was the best thing in the world. We had 9 wonderful years. I came, the congregation was 39 families. We left, it was 250 families. We built a beautiful building. We had built the Mesivta High School. I'll tell you a good thing that a rabbi should know, Rabbi Matanki. When I first came, we made the Mesivta High School. Rabbi Rotman had really made it originally. So they didn't have money to pay for a Rebbe for 11th grade. They only had money to pay 2 Rebbeim. So I said I would come every morning and I would teach Gemara from 9 to 11. I couldn't cover the rest of it, but 9 to 11 I would teach Gemara. I still have Talmidim till today. I have Rabbonim even from that class. Most of the class didn't come from Shomer Shabbos homes. So in any event, to go from the shul in Miami Beach to the Mesivta in Miami Beach, the shortcut was across a public golf course, beautiful golf course. If you went through the sidewalks, it was a 40-minute walk. If you went across the golf course, it was 15 minutes. So I naturally went across the golf course. But I would tell the secretary in shul, if people ask, where's the rabbi? Tell them he's on the golf course. Nobody will object then. You tell him he went to teach in the Mesivta, they'll say, we're paying him a salary. He's teaching in the Mesivta. What is going on here? So I'm on the golf course.
And it worked.
It worked perfectly.
So I want to jump 55 years ahead to today and to what's happening to our community, and 2 different questions and 2 different perspectives. One is explaining our reactions, and within segments of every community, Jewish and non-Jewish, but we're more aware of the Jewish community. There are people who just refuse to believe the risks, the dangers, the issues. In New York, there was going to be a chasana with 10,000 people until the governor intervened just last week. I'm trying to understand that, and at the same time trying to understand how you think things are going to change. How do you understand people who just...
Well, people don't have faith in the government, and they don't have faith in the scientists, and because the whole thing is so confusing. You never get one message. You go on the internet today, there's 50 doctors that say wear a mask, and there's 50 doctors that say a mask is useless. So how's the person supposed to decide? And countless other things like that. So therefore, people feel I'm going to live my life normally, whatever the Ribono Shel Olam has in store, he has in store, and goodbye. And so I'm going to make a chasna for 10,000 people. We'll see what'll happen. They don't have confidence in the government, and I would say almost justifiably so. Certainly here in Israel, there's no confidence in the government. They change their mind every day. There's new restrictions. They take them off. They put them on. There are hot spots. There aren't hot spots. Nobody knows what you're talking about anymore. So therefore, when confusion reigns, people do what they want to do. Do I justify it? No, I wear a mask every day. I don't go to chasanas. Okay, but I'm an old man. I try to keep, I'm at a stage in life, when we're young, Rabbi Matanki, we tell our children what to do, right? And you get to my age, the children tell you what to do. So, that's it. So I stay home. But I don't agree, but I don't feel that, I don't feel that they're murderers. I understand where they're coming from. That's not where I'm coming from, but okay. And they feel, and correctly so, that they are discriminated against. You can't go to shul, but you can go to the beach. You can't go to shul, but you can go to the NFL. I mean, a lot of things are nonsense. That's one point. And the second point that you raised, I think it's going to be very hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. When this thing ends, as it will end. So, people will be comfortable davening b'yechidas. People will be comfortable with their own minyanim in their house or in their neighborhood. Who needs a shul? Who needs a rav? There's a tremendous fallout from this, and it's visible already.
I was talking this morning to a couple of Balabatim. They told me that their tent minyan is going to be getting a heater.
Yeah, right. By them, I was asked, should we say Magen Avos or not? The moment they're asking me with the same Magen Avos, we're in trouble. Because then they think it's a minyan kavua, and they want it to be a minyan kavua. Because now everybody can be a president, and everybody can be a rabbi, and everybody can have an aliyah, and I can run it, and we can have our own kiddush.
So you remember a time, I remember a time when there were big shuls. KINS is a relic of those times when there were big shuls. And nowadays, everyone has their little shuls. It's like a Chinese menu almost sometimes.
Okay, that's because in spite of the fact that, that we are so triumphant, there are less shul Jews today than there were in Chicago 50, 100 years ago. Shul Jews. I'm not talking about Shomer Shabbos. I'm not talking about observant. I'm talking about shul Jews. Jews came to shul.
It's like the ones I remember when I was little at Beis Yitzchak in Albany Park and the Drake Avenue shul that I would go.
Right.
I would come, and when I came, my grandmother would bring us and downstairs, the men were having shalom from the early minyan. And they weren't at the early minyan because they wanted to daven vasikin. They were the early minyan because they had to go to work afterwards.
Absolutely. My father had an early minyan, 750 men. After davening, they all got on the streetcars and went to work.
Wow. And
that was the destruction. America's destruction was the Shabbos, no education, the public school. Today you can add the university to it.
And what are the dangers that we have with all of the good things we have?
Well, Hishpato aleim rov tov enom yecholim lekabel. Too good is not good. Too wealthy is not good. Too secure is not good. I think that American Jewry should be very insecure about itself. I think that what's visible is very dangerous. And, people close their eyes. People don't think it can happen. People don't want it to happen. I understand that. But I think that anybody with any historical view, to a certain extent, and I don't want to be misunderstood, but to a certain extent, American Jewry is now where German Jewry was in 1922-23. When Hitler was put in jail, you had the Weimar Republic, it was a democratic government, Jews occupied high positions, Jews were very assimilated, they were very good Germans. So I don't, chas v'sholem, say that America has been very good to the Jewish people. No other exile can equal it. But listen, the New York Times today publishes an op-ed by Louis Farrakhan. They would not publish one by Lenny Matanke. That says something.
Mm-hmm. And with all of that, is American Jewry in decline?
Well, overall, certainly the Orthodox are the Orthodox. So what are we, 20%?
Not even yet. We are actually over 35% of the children, I think, under the age of 10.
Okay, so that's it. But the Rove Minyan is gone. It's absolutely, it's not that they're not frum, they're gone. They're goyim. You go to the reform movement today is basically goyim. Really goyim according to them, not just according to halacha.
Mm-hmm.
The conservative movement is dead. And the Jews have nothing. The people of the book don't know what books you're talking about.
And for the frum community, what are the issues we're facing from a historical perspective? You mentioned already having too much.
The Gashmias, there's a good Hasidic word, Mashiv Ruach. We should increase spirituality, umorid agoshim, and lower the Gashmias. Aside from that, what else? That we don't really care about one another. That it's hard to live a moral life in the society. No matter how you try, you're still in America. Whether you go to the movie or you own a television set or not, it seeps in under the door. Those are great challenges, great challenges.
You've always managed, though, to create a balance between being open.
Oh, I'm a genius.
Well, in addition to being a genius,
because I had a Zeta that made a balance.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in my Zeta's house till I was 10. I never heard him say a negative word. He was good with everybody. Not that he gave in to everybody, and not that he didn't have an ideology, but by him, a Jew was a Jew, especially a religious Jew. So you could be whatever you wanted to be. It didn't parcel you. Today, the problem is today you are posel. You're abhorrent if you are not exactly. If you're not wearing my yarmulke, or if you're not subscribing to my, and I think a great deal of this is because of the politics of Israel. Religion became politicized. So there's no room for anybody.
But we always have hope.
Oh, we always have hope. Not only hope, their B'nai Shalom won't let it happen.
So we have that
The only question is, how painful will it be that he won't let it happen? It can be an easy ride and it can be a more difficult ride. I mean, I'm here in Israel now 25 years, Baruch Hashem. So I want to tell you it's a different Israel than when I came. Far better. Far more Jewish. Not observant, but Jewish. And that's in spite of what we are, not because of it. If anyone wanted to market a product the way we market Torah, they would go bankrupt. But nevertheless, Torah triumphs. All over the country, it triumphs.
Well, part of that triumph, Rabbi, is you,
Oh,
because of
well.
the way you've been able to communicate. A
Well, that's
colleague,
it. I think it's very important. It's not, it doesn't have to be unique to me. It's,
Rabbi Manny Feldman many years ago wrote a opinion piece in tradition. He referred to it as tefillin in a paper bag.
I remember that.
And it was an outstanding essay where he said that we need to be able to present Torah with dignity and with glory and magnificence.
Yeah, and with a positivity and not just, I want to tell you, I came to Israel right after the Yom Kippur War. And I need not tell you what the mood in the country was then. 2,600 dead soldiers, and the whole balloon was punctured. And I went to see a great man, a great Rav here in Israel. And he said to me, he said, I don't understand. Why are they hollering? He said, you know, what is the sign that you see outside a hospital? Silence. He said, Gans Klal Yisrael is in a hospital today. Some are in the psychiatric ward, some are intensive care, but everybody's in the hospital more or less. So what are you hollering about? And that remained with me till today. There's nothing to holler about. Do something, but don't holler.
On that note, Rabbi, I have to apologize to everyone who's listening and will listen, because our time is up today. But I look forward to.
I know you can't afford me anymore.
Rabbi, it is always a joy to talk with you, and it's a joy to learn from you. And you should be blessed with many, many more years of leadership.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
I look forward to your next sefer coming out, and thank you so very much.
And you keep up your great work. Kol Tuv
Kol
Selam.
Tuv, Rabbi. Bye bye. Thank you.